Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of The Comic Book Network. I'm your host, Ian.
And I'm your co-host, Ethan.
And today we are talking about Civil War, where, spoiler alert, Abraham Lincoln wins.
Bad.
I'm sorry. It just came out naturally. I feel like after reading it on the internet, it really just ingrained itself into my mind, and I felt like I had to say it.
Yeah.
Over the air.
Yeah.
It really didn't have the desired effect, but I think using the drums really brought it together, at least.
You know, it was
Alright, so we both saw the movie in two different ways. One in 3D, one in not 3D, one in 2D. And we are just going to share our thoughts. We are probably not going to get to our reads of the week this week, though I promise you we did read. So this is going to be a spoiler-filled podcast. If you do not want these spoilers, please skip to about the end, because we're probably going to have spoilers the whole time.
Even better, click the like button 3 times. Hit subscribe.
Right.
X out, make a new YouTube account, and do that like 80 more times.
That's incredible. That would be perfect. Yeah, if you want to do that, go right ahead. So let's get right into it. Keep in mind there will be spoilers, so yeah, just one last call. So there were so many aspects of this movie that we could talk about, but let's start it off with the new characters, alright? I'm going to hit you up with some characters, and then we can just have quick back and forth with them, and then move on.
Alright.
Yeah?
Alright.
So I'm even going to include some just relatively new characters, too.
New.
So let's start with Spider-Man. Everyone seems to be up in a rage about him. How did you feel?
Spider-Man, we've seen him multiple times before, and
really?
he's been good, but this reiteration,
yeah,
this rebirth of him was probably one of the best.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I mean,
there.
You know, he looks cool. His aunt looks cool, and
real cool, if you know what I mean.
And, you know, he was good comedy relief for the entirety of the film.
Right.
Was he what everyone was cracking him up to be? No. No.
I would say I really loved the genuine awkwardness in some of his scenes, and
yeah, it was real. It was
his
real.
Sort of nerdiness, just even meeting Tony Stark for the first time, he seemed really sort of awkward and coming at it like, what's happening? Like, Tony Stark was in on a joke that Spider-Man hadn't yet realized he was in on. You know, so seeing those sort of awkward situations rise up, and then seeing him thrust immediately from meeting all these superheroes to fighting these superheroes was a pretty crazy quick thing, and yeah, I'll talk about that more later.
He was pretty overpowered.
I feel like
he
overpowered.
He had his moments.
Overpowered only in that he was very powerful. I mean, for Spider-Man, he was perfect.
Yeah.
He had all the power, he had all the charm, and he had all the nerdy awkwardness that sort of made you cringe a couple of times, but it was worth watching.
It's real, you know.
Right.
It's like what a teenager
definitely real.
would do.
And speaking of nerdy awkwardness, let's move on to Ant-Man. What were your thoughts on him?
Ant-Man, I loved him in his movie, and I'm gonna venture to say that he did disappoint me. He let me down a bit in this one, because he was so good in his movie,
right?
That I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But you know, I think he was still pretty good, pretty funny, and good character. Also, when he became Giant Man.
Giant Man was probably one of the highlights of the film, I'd say. Or him riding on that arrow. That was great.
Yes. Although, if he was smart enough to transfer between Giant Man and Ant-Man, like, fast,
right,
he could have easily taken out everyone.
Maybe not everyone, but a lot of them. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought he too had some good interactions with the characters. I feel like the way they've built up every single one of these characters makes the interactions between them that much more real. And that was something that wasn't really working in Batman vs. Superman because these characters hadn't been explored enough to create real interactions.
Yeah.
But this movie already had every single one of these characters established, and I think they brought that in nicely. Before we move on to our next new character, I'd just like to highlight an example of the great characterization they had, which was, if you don't know from reading the comics, Tony Stark's dad, or adopted dad, I don't know how you say that exactly, but adopted parents, his dad was abusive, right? And they always had sort of a strained relationship. Tony still loved his dad, but, you know, not... their relationship could be tough at times. And so when Tony finds out that Bucky, you know, killed his dad and his mom, at first when he sees his dad die, he just has more of a shock than anything, right? He doesn't get propelled to action quite yet, right?
Right.
And then you move on and you see Bucky kill his mom, and that's when Iron Man is sort of launched into action. And even more later, when he's fighting Cap and Bucky, he screams out, "You killed my mom," which seems kind of weird, because why would you say that? "You killed my parents" would be a more natural thing to say, right?
Right.
In that situation. But that shows you just the great characterization there, because he didn't have that great of a relationship but with himself and his dad. And so having that where the connection is more with his mom, and even in just one line, phrases like that, you see how rich the Marvel Universe is, and it's just incredibly interesting to me.
So, another note on Ant-Man, way back then,
oh, perfect.
Before we move on to any tangents.
Right.
Before. So, I think it was interesting. This didn't really have much to do with the movie, but we see Ant-Man become Giant Man in this,
right.
And then maybe a week or two ago in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, we see Atom Man become a giant Atom Man.
Uh-huh.
Large Atom Man.
Which, just Atom.
You know, it's kind of cool because DC's playing catch-up now as far as their TV universe goes. Even
with their cinematic universe, they haven't had the time to build up all this repertoire that Marvel Cinematic Universe has. All right, let's move on to Black Panther. How did you like him?
He was good. I liked him a lot. You know, it was interesting to see how he came about and how he was a good neutral character, you know, kind of playing both sides.
Yeah.
And I honestly expected him to step in at the end scene where Captain America and Bucky are fighting Iron Man. I expected him to stop the fighting, kind of. Right. Which he didn't do.
But I've got to say, one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie was when he approached Baron Zemo, because the connection there was just so looming, like with T'Challa losing his father and losing his citizens. He experienced the same kind of loss that Baron Zemo had in Sokovia.
Yeah, I think so.
Sokovia, yeah. And I think the connection there was so real, and seeing how Black Panther can go from this violent, aggressive, just super cool superhero to a very diplomatic sort of leader. I think that was a great dynamic to explore, and they did that very well in the constraints of their time.
I think that was if you know about the hero's journey and everything, you see the atonement with father and stuff, right?
Right.
Reconciliation. And I think that's kind of what it was, because he's after Bucky the entire time, because he's like, this person killed my dad, I need to kill him. Exactly. But his dad, in the beginning, is talking to him about being a diplomat and everything. Right. And so then he finds the person who really killed his dad, and he becomes more of a diplomat and realizes we can let this go.
And like taking off his mask right there was a big step forward for him.
Yeah.
And also
a dumb move, because he could have easily been shot right in the head.
Instead, Baron Zemo tried to shoot himself in the head, which was also interesting. So let's bring it to Baron Zemo then. How did you like him as a villain? Keep in mind, Baron Zemo, we're going to see him in future movies too, so this isn't the end for him.
I'm excited for future movies with him, because this was Civil War, so no matter how bad your villain is, he's not going to be remembered.
Right.
Because what's going to be remembered is the airplane scene and the other fighting scenes, but he wasn't a memorable character.
Okay.
He was behind the scenes, and he orchestrated stuff, which was pretty cool.
Right.
But he's not someone I would go home and
Lex
tell
Luthor
people about.
Of the movie, right?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. I would say, however, I am so thankful that he was there and that he had that storyline, because for the seeming first time in the Marvel Universe, unless I'm forgetting someone, we finally have this villain who's relatable. Like, we know this villain, we know his motivations, and though they're not touched on a ton, when they are touched on, I feel like that was a very important moment of the scene, and it tied it together really well.
One of my friends, I like how he puts it. He's like, he hates it when villains have good backstories, like, oh, my parents died or something, because that doesn't justify it, right? You know, like Hitler, when Hitler was 11, his little brother died, you know, and his dad died, but that doesn't really justify killing.
Yeah, by no means does it justify it, but I feel like the fact that he has that makes him a more interesting and multi-layered character. Because if you don't have something that people can relate with, then he's just a villain for the sake of it. And that... Yeah. We've had way too many of those, except for, of course, Thanos. But I feel like this marks a very interesting point in the Marvel Universe where we might actually start to get these villains who have more to them, than just, oh, I'm going to take over the world.
Right, and that's always a good thing, you know?
Right, exactly. So let's move on to some other aspects of the story. What did you think about the main conflict, which, as we know, is, you know, registration versus non-registration? What do you think about that? What are your general thoughts?
The main conflict was there in the exposition, but really, other than that, it did not carry out throughout the movie, and really it was just there for the sake of staying true to comics.
Right, yeah, I'd agree. I think they did do well at the beginning of the movie in setting out how each character would hold to their side. Like, I felt that Tony Stark's motivations were very understandable, and I felt that Captain America's side was equally understandable, and that was really important to me. I was hoping that it wouldn't be such a black and white decision. Like, I wouldn't, through the movie, find a point where one side seemed incredibly obvious and then the other side seemed stupid. I feel like they did a good job of balancing that, where you never felt like one side was dominant.
And really, it depends on the personality of the watcher instead of, oh, we need them to take sides. Let's make them
exactly.
take this side.
And that was perfectly done for me. What else? Oh, also, I felt the conflict breaking apart the Avengers was done really well. None of them seemed to be overjoyed about doing it, but there was reason behind it, and there was understanding behind it, and even among the characters, it wasn't always black and white. Like with not Scarlet Witch, but partly Scarlet Witch, and with Vision, they were pulled to both sides, and Black Widow, she was clearly struggling between the two sides. And I think that was important, especially for a team that's been around for 4 years, according to the movie. I feel like it wouldn't be that easy to break apart. I think the cleanest break was Tony Stark and Captain America, and only because that had been set up in previous Marvel movies.
I feel like, really, I like your point, and I think one of the best scenes of the movie and most emphasis on that point is when War Machine goes down, and Falcon, even though he's on the other side, he goes down like, oh, is he okay, you know?
Right.
And I mean, he does get blasted by Iron Man, but it shows that they're still a team, and they're not wanting to cause harm.
And at that point, you had kind of, or at least I had, the tension of wondering, like, is he going in for the kill, or is he just trying to help? And I felt like
he was clearly just going down to help.
That makes sense. But I feel like that was an interesting aspect of it. Overall, I think the conflict was done very, very well. Even the side conflicts, I felt myself invested in it, and I felt like it was interesting. Now, let's go to the cons of the movie. Do you have any major complaints?
Maybe it's just me, but I didn't care that one Peggy Carter died at all.
Well, yeah. I think that was more for the benefit of severing Captain America's ties. I personally felt attached to it, having watched Agent Carter, but I feel like normal people wouldn't be that invested in it. I did like, however, how they showed Captain America reacting to that, because that's the only real way you can sympathize with that is through Captain America. Since we don't necessarily know Peggy Carter as well, right? Normal moviegoers don't. I assume you don't.
I do not know her very well.
So the main impact was brought on by seeing how Captain America would react to Peggy Carter. What did you think about the ending of the movie? It was a very vague ending. It seemed like they had somewhat good terms, but the whole Civil War wasn't really resolved.
I don't think it was wrapped up at all.
Right.
And I was expecting it to be, for the most part, resolved, because they still have Infinity Wars and other wars to fight together. You know, if they're gonna make these characters angry at each other and they don't come back together, then that's more characters you need for the 70 character quota.
Right, and who knows what's gonna happen after this, because what real movies are there gonna be that are gonna be influenced by the Civil War? Because Doctor Strange, we know, takes place before it.
Spider-Man will.
Black Panther, that might be, but Black Panther we know takes place before it. So there's just all these movies that are coming out, but they don't really relate to this topic. So I'm anxious to see how they close it up.
It's going to leave a lot of tension for a long time, and I think
Right.
that's smart in a way for money-wise, but we'll see what happens.
All right, and I know we could talk about this for hours more, but
Minutes. Minutes more.
Minutes more. But I think we're going to move on to our question of the week this week.
So I posted something, but I do not believe that at this time it has any thing. So we'll
I've got
have
a
our own
perfect question anyways. All right. So just to let you know, you can always ask questions at thecomicbooknetwork@gmail.com. That's THECOMICBOOKNETWORK and you can send in your questions, your comments, your concerns for our general well-being. If you're a doctor, you can send in your diagnosis. And even if you want to go to our website, there's an easy fill-in form right on there if you go to the contact section.
And that is network at Weebly.com or .weebly.com.
Right, exactly. And that's spelled the same exact way as the Gmail address. Exactly the same. Would you believe it? All right.
We do have like 15 hyphens just in the middle to throw you off.
that does really make for a strange sort of name. So here's my question to you. Having read the comics, what is one thing that they changed that you enjoyed, and what is one thing they changed that you wish they wouldn't have?
One of the things that I enjoyed them changing is instead of the conflict being caused by Skrulls and alien shapeshifters, this time it was caused more by Baron Zemo.
Right.
And I thought that was cool, but another thing I also liked is it wasn't overwhelming, because the comics, there were so many characters.
Right.
There were a ton of them. It was just a bloodbath,
Right.
Like some rhino guy. No one knows who he is. Not the rhino, but just some rip-off rhino.
Right.
And so I liked how they kind of mainstreamed it, made it good fit for a movie.
Okay.
And
what's one thing you didn't like?
One of the things I didn't like them changing. I don't know. I'll get back to you.
All right, so first. I'll go with the thing I liked that they changed, which was the new Warriors. I feel like having them shoved in would have been way too much. So to have them out of the picture, I think their replacement was very nice, very well done. I thought that Scarlet Witch, since she was sort of a new member, she had some sort of correlation between the New Warriors and her novelness to the whole idea of superheroing. So the fact that she, as a new superhero, could go up and cause this big riot, this big explosion, really impacted it for the better, right? And by the way, this is a little off topic from the question, but I think that the subtle relationship between Scarlet Witch and Vision was an important one in progressing the conflict, and I thought that it was pulled off well. And then one thing I didn't like that they changed was not killing Captain America. I'm sorry, I love the actor, I love Captain America, the character, but I feel like they really should have gone for the big emotional drama of it. Or at least just killed off someone.
I don't think there was room to kill off anyone. Because you need so many for Infinity Wars.
I know, but I feel like if they had maybe killed off Captain America and then added another
Captain Britain.
Captain America movie, maybe Captain Britain, but added another Captain America movie. I feel like that would have been interesting. But I do understand that aspect of like, oh, why kill off another character if we're just gonna bring him back in the next movie, you know? I feel like audiences are probably sick of that, so I do understand it. Speaking of Captain America's real quick, I loved the 3 Captain America dynamic between Falcon, Bucky, and Steve. That was great. I loved it. They had some hilarious moments, particularly in the back of the car. They had some very, touching moments too. Sad moments.
Yeah, name one.
Thomas.
From the block?
From the block, man. Also, I didn't like how Hawkeye just sort of showed up.
Yeah.
And they didn't explain his side. But yeah, that's a complaint for a different day.
So,
right.
I thought about it, and one of the things that they changed from the comics is, we won't really be able to see how much they deviated from the comics, but there was no long-term effects. I mean, there really wasn't that much that happened, you know?
Yeah,
they tried to resolve it all.
The one thing was jail, and then at the end of the movie, they're all out of jail.
Right?
Right.
It's almost like the whole thing didn't even matter. And we'll see how it affects them in future movies, you know, and their relations in Infinity Wars and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in the movie, it didn't really show too much effectiveness.
Right, it was just sort of happened. And even Spider-Man just went back to his house, chilled, like, what?
Hey, I'm home.
All right.
Got punched in Brooklyn.
And then Bucky, they just like, let's just put him back in stasis. That'll be good. I feel like it would have been much better if he hooked up with, Nick Fury and started doing his little man on the wall thing. Out in space or something like that. But, he really didn't have he had an interesting storyline throughout the movie, but he didn't have an interesting resolution, I don't feel like.
No.
Though I did like the tie-in to Wakanda and seeing just a fraction of their technological achievements. Sort of interesting.
Yeah, that last scene was pretty cool looking.
Yeah. But
reminded me of Star Wars Lando. The sky.
Yeah. Speaking of Star Wars, how about that blatant reference for Ant-Man? I'm glad they pulled that off, because I was thinking, like, the whole time, why doesn't Spidey just go around his legs, for the legs? Because that's what he told him to do for Captain America. Why not carry it over to Ant-Man as well? But
yeah, I like how he described Star Wars as, like, old.
Yeah, it was clever. I think they had a lot of good pop culture references that were not so blatant that they were stupid. Yeah,
not forced. Because you see a lot of that in like superhero movies, like them taking a selfie.
Well, and that reference was pretty forced, but I feel like it worked for the character, and we had like a basis so that it was still natural, even though it was so out there. Like,
all right, So we're running out of time.
We are.
So we could go
in
on,
life,
but yes, that too. So thank you guys for watching. Happy Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the late Sunday episode, but we just had to watch the movie
and process it. Yeah, definitely. You can find us at The Comic Book Network on our website, on our YouTube, on Spreaker, and YouTube. Both YouTube and our website have links to everything else. So feel free to check us out there, and thank you guys for listening.
sound effects.
Yeah, thanks. We just found out about them, and they are
We did
great.
not just find out about them.
We just
knew about
instated them. Yeah. Have a good day.
Yeah.